Welcome back to the inner bloom, your quiet refuge in a profoundly noisy world. Before we begin today's journey, I invite you to take a slow, deep breath in and let it out. Settle into wherever you are right now. Today, we're going to talk about a modern phenomenon, a subtle trap that many of us fall into when we set out on the path to find peace. Have you ever felt exhausted by the sheer effort of trying to heal? Have you ever felt the pressure to perform your own peacefulness? We live in an incredibly visual, fast-paced era. In our desperate search for an antidote to modern anxiety, we have inadvertently transformed spirituality and mindfulness into an aesthetic, a trend, an industry. You open your social media feeds, and you are immediately bombarded with the imagery of what I call aesthetic wellness. You see flawless individuals meditating on pristine beaches at sunrise. You see beautifully arranged altars with perfectly placed crystals, burning sage, and glowing candles. You see short cinematic clips of people drinking matcha in absolute undisturbed silence. It looks incredibly beautiful. It looks serene, and subconsciously, we begin to absorb a very specific, very dangerous message. We start to believe that inner peace has a specific look. We tell ourselves, if I just buy that expensive meditation cushion, if I just set up my room with the right warm lighting, and if I can just force my body to sit entirely motionless in the lotus position for an hour, then my mind will finally stop racing. But let's be brutally honest for a moment. Have you ever actually tried it? You buy the props, you set the stage, you sit down, cross your legs, straighten your spine, and close your eyes. On the outside, to anyone watching, or to the camera lens if you happen to be recording your journey, you look like the absolute picture of Zen. You look like a modern-day saint. But what is happening on the inside? Inside, it is absolute chaos. Your mind is screaming. You are mentally replaying an argument you had 3 years ago. You're agonizing over an email you need to send tomorrow. You are seething with resentment over a colleague's offhand comment. And underneath it all, you are incredibly frustrated because your knee hurts, your back is stiff, and you are not feeling the magical, glowing peace you were promised by the internet. When this happens, you might feel like a failure. You might think you just aren't spiritual enough. Or worse, you might force yourself to endure it, masking your internal turmoil with a serene smile, participating in a psychological phenomenon that Western psychologists call spiritual bypassing. Spiritual bypassing is the act of using spiritual ideas, practices, and aesthetics to avoid facing unresolved emotional issues, psychological wounds, and unfinished developmental tasks. It's wearing the mask of enlightenment to hide a deeply hurting, very human face. But you are not the first person to struggle with this, and you certainly won't be the last. In fact, to understand the cure for this modern malady, we need to travel back in time, hundreds of years, to a quiet temple in Japan, where a highly unconventional Zen master addressed this exact same illusion with a single brilliant stroke of a brush. Our story takes us to Japan during the Edo period. Here lived a Zen monk named Sengai Gibon. Sengai was not your typical religious figure. While many monks of his time were rigid, deeply serious, and obsessed with the strict rules of monastic life, Sengai was famous for his joyous, carefree, and wonderfully rebellious spirit. He didn't just teach through dense, complex sutras. Instead, He communicated the profound truth of Zen through art, specifically through Zenga, a type of Japanese ink painting. His brushstrokes were wild, uninhibited, and often infused with a deep, biting humor. He used his art to shatter the illusions and the egos of those who took themselves far too seriously. In the temple where Master Sengai resided, there was a particular young monk who was fiercely dedicated to his practice. In fact, he was arguably the most dedicated monk in the entire monastery. Every single day, long before the sun even thought about rising, this young man would march into the meditation hall. He was absolutely obsessed with the physical form of Zazen, seated meditation. He would sit in the most perfect, unyielding lotus position. His spine was completely straight, rigid as a plank of wood. His hands were perfectly folded in the cosmic mudra. He would sit there for hours upon hours, completely motionless. Not a muscle twitched. He was like a statue carved from stone. However, there was a dark shadow looming behind this flawless exterior. The young monk's intense physical discipline had not fostered a sense of deep compassion or profound inner peace. Instead, it had quietly nurtured a massive, towering ego. Because he could sit still longer than anyone else, he began to view himself as spiritually superior. He would finish his hours of motionless sitting and then walk around the temple grounds, silently judging everyone else. If he saw a fellow monk laughing too loudly while washing the vegetables, he would scoff, viewing them as undisciplined. If he saw an older monk shifting his legs during meditation due to arthritis, he would roll his eyes, disgusted by their lack of commitment. To this young monk, spirituality was a competition of endurance. It was an Olympic sport of stillness. He believed that the outward appearance of rigidity was the exact equivalent of inner enlightenment. Master Sengai, with his sharp, observant eyes, watched this young man day after day. He saw the arrogance masquerading as piety. He saw the spiritual bypassing in its purest, most ancient form. Sengai knew he had to intervene, not with a harsh scolding, but with a mirror that would reflect the absurdity of the young monk's mindset. One humid afternoon, as the cicadas buzzed relentlessly in the temple gardens, the young monk was once again putting on his daily performance. He was seated on the veranda, eyes half closed, back stiff, perfectly immobile, ensuring everyone walking by could witness his spectacular piety. Master Sengai quietly approached. He observed his student for a long moment, a faint, knowing smile playing on his lips. Without saying a word, Sengai retreated to his quarters. He prepared his inkstone, took up a large, coarse brush, and unrolled a sheet of rice paper. With a few swift, masterful, and utterly unpretentious strokes, Sengai painted an animal. It wasn't a soaring dragon or a majestic tiger. It was a frog. But it wasn't just any frog. It was a remarkably fat, incredibly mundane-looking toad. It was sitting squatted on a lily pad by the edge of a murky pond. Its belly was protruding, its posture was hunched yet completely still, and its large, bulging eyes were staring blankly into the void. It looked exactly like a creature entirely absorbed in deep meditation. Beneath this humorous illustration, Sengai took his brush and wrote a single line of calligraphy. A brilliant, devastating piece of satire. He wrote, "If by merely sitting perfectly still one could become a Buddha, then this frog has been awakened for 8 lifetimes." Later that day, the young monk discovered the painting left intentionally in his quarters. When he read Master Sengai's words, The blood rushed to his face. In an instant, his towering tower of spiritual pride crumbled to the ground. He realized, with profound embarrassment, the absolute truth of Sengai's mocking message. If the ultimate goal of the spiritual path was simply to sit without moving a muscle, then he was completely outclassed by a common swamp frog. A frog can sit entirely motionless on a muddy bank for half a day, unblinking, perfectly still. But why is the frog sitting there? Is the frog contemplating the nature of the universe? Is the frog cultivating compassion for all sentient beings? No. The frog is sitting in absolute stillness because it is waiting for a fly to buzz by so it can violently snatch it out of the air with its tongue. The frog's outward stillness is merely a biological mechanism, a predatory waiting game. And suddenly, the young monk had to ask himself, what was he waiting for? When he sat there rigid and unmoving, what was the true purpose? He wasn't waiting for a fly, but he was waiting for something just as superficial. He was waiting for praise. He was waiting for the admiration of his peers. He was waiting to feed his own ego with the hollow title of a holy man. His stillness was entirely physical, while his mind was a turbulent ocean of judgment, superiority, and pride. Here at the Inner Bloom, we must ask ourselves how often we act like Master Sengai's frog. The aesthetic wellness trend has conditioned us to confuse the tools of healing with the destination of healing. A meditation cushion, a stick of Palo Santo, a frequency playlist. These are wonderful things. They are tools. They are vehicles meant to help transport you inward. But the tragedy of the modern era is that we have mistaken the vehicle for the destination. You can curate the most breathtakingly beautiful Zen-inspired bedroom. You can post poetic quotes about letting go and vibrating higher. You can create an impenetrable fortress of aesthetic tranquility. But if, the moment you step off that expensive yoga mat, you are consumed by jealousy over a friend's success, if you are cruel to service workers, if you harbor deep, unexamined resentments toward your family, if you use the concept of good vibes only as a shield to avoid taking accountability for your toxic behaviors, then you are simply a frog sitting on a very expensive lily pad. Spiritual bypassing is dangerous because it teaches us to suppress our humanity. We believe that to be healed or spiritual, we are no longer allowed to feel anger, grief, or frustration. We artificially detach from our pain. We force a smile. We chant a mantra over a bleeding wound instead of actually cleaning it and stitching it up. When you sit for an hour in forced, painful stillness, judging yourself for having a busy mind, and judging others who aren't on your level, you are engaging in spiritual materialism. You are accumulating spiritual points to build up your ego. True inner stillness does not require a picturesque backdrop. It does not require absolute silence. And it certainly does not require you to be devoid of human emotion. The greatest illusion we face is the belief that peace is found by retreating from the world, by building a silent, perfect bubble. But the world is loud. The world is messy. The world is full of traffic jams, broken hearts, difficult conversations, and overwhelming days. If your peace can only exist in a silent room with a lit candle, it is a very fragile peace indeed. So, how do we avoid becoming the spiritual frog? How do we find authentic healing in an age of aesthetic performance? First, we must embrace the messy reality of being human. True healing does not mean you will never be sad again. It does not mean you will never lose your temper. Enlightenment is not the eradication of emotion. It is the mastery of your relationship to it. When you feel anger rising in your chest, true mindfulness is not suppressing it with a forced mantra of peace and light. True mindfulness is saying, I am angry right now. My heart is beating fast. I feel hurt. It is allowing the emotion to exist without letting it control your actions. It is having the courage to look at your ugly, unpolished shadows and treat them with profound self-compassion. Stop trying to look healed and give yourself the permission to actually be in the messy process of healing. Second, we must learn to find the sacred in the mundane. There is a famous Zen proverb, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. You do not need to travel to a retreat in the Himalayas to find your center. The most profound spiritual practices are hidden in the most incredibly ordinary moments of your daily life. Consider the act of cleaning. You could be scrubbing a dirty toilet, your hands covered in harsh soap, doing a chore you traditionally despise. But if, in that moment, you bring your complete, undivided attention to the act, if you feel the temperature of the water, the texture of the sponge, the physical movement of your arm, if you stop wishing you were somewhere else and fully inhabit the present second, then, in that moment, scrubbing the toilet becomes a high form of meditation. A person scrubbing a floor with a crystal clear present mind is vastly more enlightened than a person sitting on a silk cushion with a mind full of hatred. Try practicing mindfulness while you are stuck in rush hour traffic. When the cars are gridlocked and the horns are blaring, you have a choice. You can let your blood pressure rise, cursing the world and fighting against a reality you cannot change. Or you can view the red brake lights in front of you as a signal to pause. You can drop your shoulders. You can take a deep breath of air into your lungs. You can listen to the rhythm of the city. You can find a sanctuary of peace right there, sitting in the driver's seat of your car. True stillness is not the absence of noise. It is the ability to maintain your inner quiet amidst the chaos. And finally, we must release the need to judge the journeys of others. Your path to inner peace is uniquely yours. For you, it might look like sitting quietly in a room. For someone else, it might look like painting a canvas, sweating through a heavy workout, writing a novel, or simply holding the hand of a friend who is crying. Do not turn your practice into a pedestal. True spiritual growth always makes you softer, more empathetic, and more tolerant of the people around you. If your healing makes you feel superior to others, it is not healing. It is just your ego in a new disguise. Do not be seduced by the glossy magazine version of spirituality. Do not waste your life pretending to be perfectly still on the outside while a storm rages on the inside. Remember the wisdom of Master Sengai. The goal is not to be a frog, waiting for a prize, pretending to be a statue. The goal is to be fully, vibrantly, authentically alive. Thank you for choosing to spend this time with the inner bloom. If you take away anything from our time together today, let it be this. Give yourself a break. If you are tired of trying to be perfectly peaceful, let it go. You don't need the expensive props. You don't need the perfect aesthetic. If you are having a difficult day, taking a nap, crying into a pillow, or taking a slow walk around your neighborhood without your phone, That is profound spiritual practice. That is honoring your true needs. Peace is not a performance. It is a quiet, gentle homecoming to your true self, flaws and all. If this story resonated with you, if it helped you drop your shoulders just a little bit today, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to The Inner Bloom. Share this video with a friend who might be putting too much pressure on themselves to be perfect. Let's grow a community that values real, messy, beautiful healing over aesthetic perfection. Until next time, be gentle with yourself, breathe deeply, and let your inner self bloom naturally and at its own beautiful pace. Goodbye.